Hello and welcome to RKs Eagle Eye analysis of the ongoing World Cup T20 matches being played in Australia. So let's summarize last week matches. Um, One, the interruptions due to rains have been much lesser when compared to the previous week, but teams continue to lose because of captaincy errors and team selection. And mind games have come into play. Fresh pitches at Australia, especially at Perth, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, it continued to zip with that hard, bouncy track. There was that carry, there was that swing early on, and definitely bowler's dream. And batters, all they need to do is bat straight, especially on the V, and that continued to yield better results than the slot batted Hoik. So let's look into captaincy errors and team selection. So first, let's get into Zimbabwe versus Bangladesh match. I was surprised that the quicks were not bowled the full quota of 4 overs, and instead spinners like Raza and Williams, they continued to bowl the full quota of 8 overs between them. And so Muzarabani and Chatara, they bowled only 5 overs and gave away just 31 runs with 2 wickets. Whereas these two spinners were mauled for 61 runs, and that actually tilted in Bangladesh favor. So it's a big error from Zimbabwe as against Bangladesh. South Africa versus India. Well. Team selection that cost that match. While Lungi Ngidi was brought in at the expense of Shamsi because of the Perth pitch, I was surprised to see Deepak Hooda was brought in at the expense of Akshar Patel. Let's understand that Hooda hasn't had a practice on these bouncy track pitches, and asking him to bat straight up, face the pace bowling at Perth, it was asking too much from the young batsman. I would have preferred either Harshal Patel on the bowling front or Chahal, you know. So as mentioned to you last week, that death bowling is a major concern for India, and Rohit hasn't been able to fill that gap, and that cost the match against South Africa as well. Okay, in this captaincy error, let's look into India versus Bangladesh. Bowling Taskin Ahmed out at a stretch in his initial 4 overs was a big gamble by Shakib, and Indians were happy to see him through. And again, bowling himself out by the 14th over and Mustafir by the 17th over meant that Shakib has to have Shariful and Hassan, the two inexperienced bowlers, to bowl the last 2 overs. That cost 27 runs of just 11 balls. When Bangladesh batted, India bowled pretty badly. They bowled at full length and not short of a good length. And that allowed batsmen like Litin Das to go through the line of the shot. Mark my words there. And that took Bangladesh to an imposing 77 of 66, sorry, of 7 overs. The rain break gave India the much needed talk amongst themselves as to how to bowl. And once they came onto the field, they took the pace of the ball and bowled back of the length deliveries. And this execution had Bangladesh slogging and not going through the line of the ball. And they should have actually played it straight, and they slogged. And that resulted in Bangladesh falling short. So let's look into the mind games, which has started coming up from the previous week onwards, because it was the semifinals lineup, who's going to play whom, and the mind game started playing very heavily on almost all the teams. So let's look into Afghanistan versus Sri Lanka. So before Afghanistan could play their first match, they were already at the bottom of the table, having not played two matches due to wet conditions, including their match against Ireland. Afghanistan is one team which has a great individual contributors like Gurbaz at the top of the order, Mujib, and Rashid Khan. Whereas Sri Lanka conditions suited them as they were able to take the pace of the surface. Now, Sri Lankans performed are well known based on the pitch conditions and they were relentless with the ball, and that meant that they could restrict Afghanistan to below par score. Now, the next match, England versus New Zealand. Boy, oh boy, the intent to score and win against New Zealand with fearless cricket brought England to a match away from getting into the semi-finals. On the other hand, New Zealand, having seen the Sri Lankans taking the pace of the ball during the match that was played in the afternoon against Afghanistan, did not teach them a lesson. Instead, they bowled fast and the first 80 runs were leaked in the 10 overs without a wicket being lost. And when New Zealanders dropped Butler twice, they were down and out at that point itself. So the mind games. Malan was asked to bat at number 9, shows the fluid batting lineup that England posed. So when Williamson left at a strike rate of just 100 at 109 for 3 in the 15th over, so went the chances of New Zealand. I like the way the spinners were used and bowled by Butler. So South Africa and Pakistan, again, mind games were in play. The aggressive instinct, the aggressive intent was on display by the Pakistanis. And for the first time in more than a year, the Pakistanis proved that even if Rizwan and Babar fell cheaply, they could get a score which can be easily defended by their experienced bowlers. Australia versus Afghanistan. Australians' approach to this game was baffling to say the least. Dropping Stark at a crucial match was a very, very bad call. They have seen the previous games on the same pitch moments ago and must have seen how New Zealand spinners rather, took the pace of the ball. And the spinners, they actually flighted the ball and gripped the surface. Now, instead, Aussies did not bring in Agar as a replacement to Stark. And that allowed Afghanistan to come very close to Aussies total. India versus Bangladesh. Again, that mind game. I loved it. I liked the way Shakib downplayed all the incidents in front of the media persons there. Be it talking about India's chances to lift the World Cup in this edition of T20. Accepting to play in wet conditions, though the reporter was asking too many questions at that point of time, or underplaying the fake throw incident. But having done that all in front of the media, the intent that he showed on the field was completely the opposite. And no wonder why they are called tigers. Now let's talk about the bowling worries. That India conceded 37 runs in 3 overs against Bangladesh means India has not prepared themselves yet for the death bowling. That Rohit Sharma hasn't had that confidence in Mohammad Shami bowling the last over is really a worry. Arshdeep conceding 13 runs in the first 4 balls of the final over talks about options, little options India has got at the moment. Going forward, Now, India is going to play Zimbabwe tomorrow. I would expect Chahal to play in tomorrow's match, replacing Akshar Patel. And that would mean a match practice before Chahal plays with England in the semis. This will give an ample opportunity for India to beat Zimbabwe as well. Now, on the other hand, Sri Lanka has nothing to lose against England. And one thought that they will play to their full potential, keeping in mind that they are playing like their home conditions, which is Sydney. And that would mean three spinners would be in operation. But definitely England had other ideas. They took the pace of the ball, and in the process, Sri Lanka could muster just 25 runs in the last 5 overs, and overall allowing Sri Lankan to score just 141 of the 20 overs. And that allowed England to come into the semi-finals. If India loses to Zimbabwe, Pakistan has come to form at the right moment and have all the chances to lift this edition of World Cup. But still, India will need to beat Zimbabwe. So as mentioned to you last week, England and New Zealand will come into the semi-finals, and my analysis proved right. So it will mean that England will have to face India, assuming that India will beat Zimbabwe, and New Zealand will need to face South Africa, assuming South Africa will beat Netherlands. Or more analysis of the semi-final matches will be aired on Tuesday, the day before the start of the semi-finals. I hope you enjoyed our analysis, and please don't miss the semi-final and the final matches, and in particular, my analysis from RKs Eagle Eye. Thank you and have a lovely weekend. Bye.